Hi guys, you're welcome back to the channel, and if you're new here, my name is Nana. I hold a master's degree in business finance, and on this channel we discuss everything personal finance and development. And so in today's video, I'm going to share the 17 habits that tend to set the ultra rich apart from the bottom 99%. And so without further ado, let's just move to the first point, which is to set clear and written goals. Now, according to Napoleon Hill, he believes that in order for anyone to go on to achieve anything great in life or to become successful, you need to identify your definite chief aim. And your definite chief aim is that goal or that purpose that you're not willing in any way to compromise on. So what is that thing that you want to actually achieve in life? For example, it might be that you want to work from anywhere in the world, or you want financial freedom, or you want to buy a couple of assets like houses, cars, and all that. That definite chief aim should be prioritized ahead of any other goal. And you should go on to sit down, write it down, and then write clear plans or actionable steps as to how you're going to achieve that goal. If you're to go on to do this, he believes that you're going to be successful in the near future. The second habit of the ultra rich is that they live below their means. If you're to read the book The Millionaire Next Door, it goes on to prescribe that every single person that was interviewed in that book actually did one thing, or they adopted one strategy when it comes to building wealth, and that is they lived below their means and they were less likely to purchase things that were considered liabilities in the guise of assets. For example, going on to purchase a new vehicle felt like losing money, and so what they did instead, according to the Millionaire Next Door, is that they bought slightly used vehicles that were in good condition, and that helped them to cut down their expenditure and also subsequently to invest what is left afterwards into assets like the stock market, real estate, and all other things that are likely to return some form of income in the near future. This brings us to the third habit, which is to automate savings and investment. More often than not, I hear people complain about investment and savings. And of course, it is true. It is extremely difficult when it comes to investing or probably even setting aside something at the end of the month for you to actually pursue that financial goal. If you're to decrease the friction associated with savings and investment, it makes it much more easier for you to save and much more easier for you to invest. And then if you're to increase the friction associated with spending, then it also increases your chances of having enough left at the end of the month for you to save. So what you want to do is that try as much as possible and then delay purchases. Don't just go out there to buy on impulse, like you're shopping, window shopping, and then you find something that might be of interest to you and you just buy it. You buy it out of emotions, not necessity. So what you need to know is that you need to delay your purchases and then think about it for a couple of times, and probably it should be like maybe a week or a month, and then ask yourself after that week or after that month, is this something that I still need? If you need it, then probably you can go on to purchase it. But once that emotion actually diminishes over time, and then you ask yourself the question, and then you're not still in need of that thing, and it tells you that it isn't something that you actually needed in the first place. And that is the surest way for you to stick to your budget, save more, and then invest more. This brings us to the fourth habit of the ultra rich, which is that they read daily. So it is reported that Warren Buffett reads on average between 4 and then 5 hours every single day. And that helps him to fortify his mind with things that are needed in his capacity as CEO of Berkshire Hathaway when it comes to picking the right investment and then ensuring the maximum returns on people's investment with the company and then subsequently his investment in the stock market. So what you want to know is that the ultra rich tend to read so much because they consistently want to educate themselves, and more often than not, people tend to limit education to formal institutions like schools, unis, and they feel like those are the only avenues that you can actually go on to pursue education through. But what you can do instead is that you can read books, you can listen to podcasts, try as much as possible, and then broaden your knowledge. Or if it is a specialized knowledge or specialized skill that you want to pursue, try as much as possible on a daily basis to read at least an hour, and that would help you and then take you a step closer towards the attainment of your financial goals. This brings us to the fifth habit, which is to develop multiple streams of income. And at this point, it is much more difficult, of course, with the fluctuations in the economy. But what you need to know is that building multiple streams of income is one of the hallmark of the ultra rich. They tend to have on average 7 streams of income. So try as much as possible. Sit down, assess your life, assess your experiences and your skill set, and then ask yourself the simple question: what is it that I'm so good at that people would pay me to get me to actually teach them or to get me to do it for them? So if you're able to ask yourself this question, and you're able to identify that interest in the thing that you're very good at, then you might try as much as possible and then list that skill set or that talent on freelancing apps like Upwork and Fiverr, and people would pay you to get those things done for them or to teach them how to do these things, which also increases your chances of actually going on to diversify your income streams in the near future, because people would pay you and then subsequently you would have enough to probably start your own business or invest in the stock market or in the real estate sector or anything that is likely to make you better off financially. This brings us to the sixth habit of the ultra rich, which is they actually go on to prioritize delayed gratification as opposed to instant gratification. So this is one thing that actually sets the poor apart from the rich. Now, what you need to know is that delayed gratification is a hallmark of the ultra rich. They don't tend to pursue ventures that are likely to bring them returns in the shortest possible time. They're always looking forward to building or winning in the long run. So someone, for example, like Warren Buffett started investing when he was as young as 11 years old. Building wealth actually takes time and it's not easy. So try as much as possible and then put measures in place, adopt long-term strategies that can help you to actually subsequently go on to attain your financial goals, as opposed to focusing on, all these gurus online trying to promise X amount of returns if you're to do A, B, C, and all that, promising several returns within the shortest possible time, and then going on to teach you and to sell you several courses, which they also go on to make their money from. What you need to know is that most people that sell you courses online trying to promise you instant gratification tend to make money off the goal of you pursuing money within the shortest possible time and not actually building wealth or building companies on their own like they tend to promise. This brings us to the seventh habit, which is to network with people that are likely to have a positive impact on you. So according to Napoleon Hill, one of the greatest things that you can do in order to build wealth and to become successful in life is to master the principle of the mastermind alliance. So he believes that if you're to surround yourself with people that tend to push you or to try as much as possible to trigger some positive emotions or responses within you, you're likely to go on to become hungry and then pursue your goals in life. The people that you tend to spend so much time with are likely to have a massive impact on you. In a recent study, the study goes on to prescribe that the people that you tend to spend so much time with actually have a massive impact on influence on you. And so if you're obese and you're likely to hang out with people that are fit and in shape, you're likely also to in the long run actually reduce weight. However, if you're not obese or you're in shape and then you hang around with people that are obese, you're actually likely to also increase your weight in the future. So what you need to know is that the people that you tend to hang around and you actually go about to do things with would have a very massive impact on you. And that is why you want to choose your circle wisely. This brings us to the eighth habit of the ultra rich, which is to focus on a high value skill and then learn that skill and then go about life with it. For example, you can learn how to sell, which is a high value skill, or probably to code, or to actually help people to start companies or provide some level of specialized abilities to people who are in need. What you need to know is that if you're able to master these things, then you increase your chances of actually surviving or becoming successful in life. But of course, in our day and age, you don't have to learn everything from scratch, because if you're able to master AI agents, these AI agents would help you and then position you to master all these things. So for example, unlike the olden days where you had to learn sales from scratch, learning how to upsell, learning how to get around objections and all that, it is much more easier for you to employ the services of an AI agent when it comes to sales or probably even coding. You can use apps like Replit. You can create your own apps and your own websites without even having any prior knowledge of coding or building websites altogether. So what you might also want to focus on in this modern day and age is how to harness the power of AI agents in the pursuit of your financial goals. This brings us to the ninth habit of the ultra rich, which is that they track their expenses religiously. So what people tend to do, and usually poor people, is that they shy away from their expenses, or they don't actually sit down to analyze where their money is coming from and where, importantly, the money is actually going. And that stems from a psychological effect known as the ostrich effect. So what people tend to do is that they shy away from financial responsibilities, or some families actually tend to not focus on their finances or to even discuss them at all. And that really has a negative impact on what you actually want to achieve financially. That position is tantamount to you being blindfolded and still being put in a dark room and expected to find stuff in the room. So what you want to do is that you need to sit down, track wherever your money is going, and then try as much as possible to cut expenses on things that you don't actually need, which would help you and then position you in a very great way to achieve your financial goals. This brings us to the 10th habit of the ultra rich, which is that they take calculated risk. So what poor people tend to do is that they shy away from risk altogether, or they are extremely risk averse. So they don't want to take on anything that is outside their comfort zone. So they would rather expect a paycheck at the end of the month as opposed to going to start their own business or even commercializing the skills that they actually have or they've acquired over the years from their 9 to 5. So they feel extremely comfortable in whatever financial situation they are. As opposed to that, the ultra rich are extremely hungry, but what they do is that they take calculated risk. So they don't let the risk actually stop them from pursuing their goals, but they actually go on to ask themselves, how can we still go on to achieve this financial goal without actually exposing ourselves to the risk that much? And they tend to fall on the advice of experts, which reduces their exposure to the risk and then subsequently increase their chances of becoming successful financially. This brings us to the 11th habit of ultra rich people, which is that they tend to exercise gratitude and then go on to exercise the power of imagination. So think about it, every single thing that we use in today's world, except the natural things that we actually inherited from nature, is actually as a result of someone else's imagination. So for example, the phone that we are currently using is actually because of someone else's imagination. The houses that we live in were born out of the imagination of an architect. The railroads were born out of the imagination of civil engineers. And you need to know one thing, that whatever you set your mind to achieve, you need to visualize that thing. Try as much as possible and convince yourself and see that thing in your mind's eye before you even go on to pursue it. So for example, I had the goal of shooting, editing, and then posting 100 videos at the end of the year. And currently, this is my 42nd video that I'm shooting, which I would edit and subsequently post on YouTube. At the beginning of this year, I didn't have any of these things in existence. So I called all these 42 videos from my imagination. And there are several things that you can actually do if only you're able to convince yourself, stay disciplined, visualize, and then believe beyond reasonable doubt that you can actually achieve it. This brings us to the 12th habit of the ultra rich, which is that they tend to avoid bad debt. So there's a difference between bad debt and then good debt. And that is what the ultra rich actually know, and that is what they leverage on. They take on loans from banks and of course even through the flotation of shares and purchases from the public on the stock market, and they get the money, and then that is in the form of loan, which is taxed at a very low corporation tax rate of probably between 8 and 10%. On the other hand, what poor people tend to do is that they borrow at extremely higher interest rates. So for example, the average APR on your credit card debt is hovering around 21%. That is nearly times 2 of what the ultra rich attract when they borrow money or they take money in the form of loans from the banks and of course from the stock market. So try as much as possible and then leverage your assets by taking on loans to purchase assets, which also increase the chances or the likelihood of you increasing your income in the near future. So simply put, taking on loans or going into debt to purchase assets increase your chances of building wealth in the long run, just like the ultra rich. According to Napoleon Hill, one of the reasons why people tend to be less successful in life and others extremely successful in life is because of the fear of failure, which is also one of the 6 basic fears that he talks about in his book, Think and Grow Rich. So that brings us to the 13th habit of the ultra rich, which is that they embrace failure as a mere invitation for them to try something new. Failing in life isn't the end of everything. What you need to know is that you can build on the experience and the skills that you've gathered through failing and then actually go on to leverage on that and then build whatever goal or pursue whatever success story that you want to write in the long run. So failure is not an end in itself, but it is rather a mere invitation for you to try something new. And this time, mind you, you've got a backlog of experience, of skill set, and of talent that you've attained through the previous failures, which also increases your chances of becoming successful in the pursuit of your goals. This brings us to the 14th habit of the ultra rich, which is that they prioritize their health and their energy. Don't try and then sacrifice the goals that actually lays the golden eggs in the pursuit of finding more golden eggs. So in the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, Stephen Covey goes on to prescribe that people tend to focus so much on their goals that it actually tend to forget about the production capability or sometimes themselves, because without your health it is very, very difficult for you to pursue those goals. And that is one thing that rich people tend to do. So they try as much as possible to take their vacation, and when they're on vacation they try to detach themselves from anything that is likely to stress them, and that actually helps them to actually avoid burnout and stress in the long run, which also subsequently increase their chances of becoming successful in life altogether. This brings us to the 15th habit of the ultra rich, which is that they own their time. So what you want to avoid in the long run is to trade your time for money, which is what we tend to do by working a 9 to 5. If you don't find a way, according to a quote, popular quote out there, if you don't find a way to make money whilst you're sleeping, you'll work for the rest of your life. And at this point, it's not, very, very bad to actually have a 9 to 5. However, with the rise of AI agents, it poses a very serious risk of you actually being sacked from work or you becoming redundant as a result of AI coming in to replace you. So think about all the basic things that you're doing at work, like data entry, going on to advise people on how to place their investments or how to manage their portfolio. All these things are things that with the automation that AI comes with, it becomes very, very easy for companies to actually go on to employ the services of AI agents, which subsequently cuts down their cost, because every company is going on to reduce their costs and then increase their profits in the near future. With the inception of several technology at the beginning of the 2000s, it made it much more difficult for several professions to actually stay afloat. For example, back in the day, we had 100 men actually plowing a field in order to go on to plant seeds. Today, with heavy-duty machines and equipment being invented, it is much more easier for you to do that with less men. Probably like just 2 men, you'll be able to do the work of 100 men. And that is what is likely to happen in the future with AI. So what you want to do is that you need to try as much as possible and then diversify your income streams like we spoke about earlier, because the rise of AI would lead to the redundancy of several other skill sets, talents, and then of course services in the economy as it stands now. This brings us to the 16th habit of the ultra rich, which is that they think in decades and not in days. So what people tend to do is that they focus on just what is likely to happen in the shortest possible time. Rich people plan ahead of time. So for example, Elon Musk actually took advantage of the shift from fuel combustion engines into electric powered vehicles. And today, he is the richest man in the world by building electric vehicles, which is also meant to reduce the carbon footprints of human beings worldwide. Now, he was able to position himself just in time strategically to take advantage of what was likely to happen in the future. Of course, in the EU, by 2030, several major vehicle manufacturing companies like VW, BMW are likely to replace all the vehicles that they produce with electric vehicles. That actually goes on to cement the fact that rich people are very proactive and extremely innovative, and they think about things that are likely to happen in the long run and in decades, as opposed to things that are happening in months or years. This brings us to the 17th and the last habit, which is to take decisive steps. What tend to actually separate the poor from the rich is the ability to make timely and decisive decisions that actually helps them to take advantage of several opportunities in the economy. Napoleon Hill goes on to say that decisiveness, or the rich actually taking prompt decision, is what he was able to identify with the hundreds of millionaires that he actually went on to interview and to study for a period of over 20 years. He realized that all of them were decisive. They took decisive steps, and even though they were not successful in several other ventures, they tried as much as possible to build based on the knowledge and the experience that they had gained from their failure over the years. And so that is one thing that you need to know. Try as much as possible and get that goal actioned out. If it is to start on YouTube, try and then shoot your first video. It shouldn't be as difficult as you think. It is much more easier, of course, with constant practice. And if you're to go on to shoot several videos, it becomes much more easier for you to speak to the camera and to learn basic skills like editing and all that. If it is the goal of saving, go on to start today, because if you're to start today, then you can take advantage of the compound interest effect, which would also exponentially grow your money and increase your chances of you actually becoming successful in the long run. At this point, if you found value with this video, I humbly plead with you to help by liking and then actually go on to subscribe to the channel, because we'll be shooting several other videos on finance and personal development. Thank you, and see you in the next video.